As part of 7 News' commitment to bringing you all the information you need to get a vote ready for the upcoming primary election for governor, we're introducing you to another candidate here. We're joined by Republican John Warren, a candidate for governor. John, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your business background, what it is that qualifies you to be governor.
Sure. So when I came out of the Marine Corps, I faced what a lot of veterans face, which is I could get the job interview, but oftentimes I would hear, we really appreciate your service, but we don't feel like you had the necessary real-world experience. So I had to actually go out and create a job, and I started a company called Lima One Capital. We do lending to real estate investors. We've taken an initial $1 million investment, turned it into a $1 billion company. We lend across the country. We've been recognized as the fastest growing company in the entire state, one of the top 10 best places to work, and the most ethical company in South Carolina. So some people talk about creating jobs. I've actually done it. I know the tax system, how punitive it is against small businesses. I know the implications of our healthcare system, and we need someone that actually knows business to actually create these jobs, someone that's signed the front of a paycheck rather than always signing the back of a paycheck.
When you say creating jobs, is it the governor's duty to create jobs in South Carolina?
What they do is they create fertile soil for entrepreneurs to go out and take the risk and plant seeds that turn into great companies like Lima One Capital. So if the people in charge of Columbia don't understand the tax code, they don't understand how punitive it is against the small business owners. I was with a small business owner the other day. He was a native of South Carolina, very successful, and he told me his one regret was that he started the company in South Carolina. And he said that had he started it in Georgia or Germany and moved it here, the state would have rolled out all these incentives, given him all these advantages, but because he started it here, he's penalized. He pointed across the street to another company that had moved here. They paid nothing in property taxes, and my friend that I met campaigning, he paid $286,000 a year. So it's not a fair process right now, and we need to protect the businesses that also start here, as well as attract great companies like the Michelins and the BMWs.
But I mean, you're running as a Republican. Republicans controlled the governor's mansion now for the better part of a decade, controlled both chambers of the legislature that entire time. Almost all of the constitutional offices. Are Republicans, your own party, not getting the job done in that regard?
Our party is absolutely not getting the job done. And you look at Governor McMaster, you know, he says one thing, he says he's a conservative, but then the people that he supports, they're liberal legislators. And when you look at the makeup of the legislature, a lot of them say they're Republicans, but many of them are former Democrats who have just switched parties. They're Republicans in name only. They do not espouse or represent the Republican platform, and we need true conservatives who honor the Republican platform to go down there and represent the taxpayers.
Interestingly, when I talk to business owners, they don't tell me their problem is taxes or health care. They tell me their problem is finding anybody to work for them.
Absolutely.
There's a serious shortage of people to do jobs like drive trucks with a CDL.
Yep.
How does the state supply employers with the jobs they need?
So the way I look at economic development, it's 3 things. 1 is taxes. 2, I would say, is education. And 3 are our crumbling infrastructure, our roads and our bridges. So what you mentioned was education. Another sad fact that goes to what you were talking about, there was a huge employer in the lower part of the state. In another state, it takes them 6 applications to find 1 qualified employee. Here in South Carolina, it's 26 applications to find 1 qualified employee. And that starts with our education system. Liberals will lie to us. They'll tell us that we have a money problem, but we spend $13,000 per year per student on education. The problem is the allocation of the dollars. We allocate less than half of that $13,000 to the classroom. Less than half. If it was a charity, it'd be shut out, it'd be turned off, run out of business. But that's our education system. We need to get more school choice. We need to bring back school classes like shop, like welding. We need to offer internships. We need to offer apprenticeships. We need to work with the technical colleges, to work with the private sector to find what people need to really be qualified for these great jobs, because there are plenty of them out there, just as you mentioned.
Some of the great jobs that are out there: police officer, corrections officer, school teacher. if you go to any of these public institutions, they are struggling badly to find people to fill those jobs. Is that a pay problem?
I'll give you an example. You mentioned corrections officers. So we all are familiar with the prison riots that occurred. You know, I am a businessman, I'm a conservative, and I'm a Marine. So what I want to do to a lot of these complex problems is bring conservative business solutions to solve the problem. With the corrections officers, if we combine, which we called for prior to the prison riots, if we combine as a state the Department of Corrections with PPP, which is the Pardons and Paroles Department, we would immediately save $2.8 million without laying off one person. That would allow us to hire more corrections officers, pay them more, because right now they start at $25,000, which means there's 170% turnover year after year. And then we can also train them better. So that is a real conservative business solution to a complex problem, and that is just one of hundreds of problems that we have throughout the state where we need a businessman to really solve the problem.
What about teachers? I mean, they were marching on the State House a week ago Saturday, demanding more pay.
So right now, $13,000 spent per child per year, less than half goes to the classroom. I would want to mandate that at least 70% reaches the classroom. That way we can pay our teachers more. We can have smaller class sizes, we can have better class offerings, and again, that is a conservative solution without raising any more money to a complex problem, and we can solve it.
A couple of minutes ago you mentioned the money going to roads. The state passed a gas tax. It's climbing 2 cents a year over the next few years. For or against the gas tax?
Totally against. We did not have a money problem. We had a mismanagement of our money problem. We have called for the elimination of the DOT Commission. We have called for the elimination of the State Infrastructure Bank. And ultimately, the governor must be responsible for our roads and DOT. We have to be able to hold someone accountable. It should be a cabinet level position. And we have to have a strategic 5-year plan and ensure that the roads are paved based on usage and need, not based on political cronyism, which is occurring right now. We have certain counties throughout the state that get more allocation of funding, even though no one's using the roads, just because they have a powerful senator in the State House. And as governor, I will fight to change that.
Can you think of any evidence of that? I mean, cronyism and saying that's happening.
There is a highway in Florence that cost the taxpayers $144 million, and hardly anyone uses it. That is a great example of how our tax dollars are being wasted when there are tons of people throughout the state, tons of areas that could use that $144,000 for road projects that are needed because the areas are growing. There are tons of volume in terms of the cars on the road, but they're not getting the funds because of this one senator in Florence who is really ripping off the rest of South Carolina.
Senator Leatherman, I presume you're talking
Absolutely.
about. Okay, he's been in that office for quite some time
Yes.
and has a lot of influence over how money gets spent. But
Yep.
even if you were elected governor, senators like Senator Leatherman would still have more control over how money gets spent than you would.
Well, one of the things that I'm going to do as governor, I am committed to changing the makeup of the legislature. So if you are a Republican who wants to betray the Republican platform, like Senator Leatherman, and you're in the legislature, I am going to systematically target you. I'm going to find quality candidates to run against you, and I'm going to help them get financing, and I'm going to campaign with them. And that way we can change the makeup of the legislature. Because if you don't change the makeup of the legislature, we're going to continue to have the same problems that we have now. I mean, we have a current governor right now that supports and has endorsed Hugh Leatherman, the same person that wants to fund Planned Parenthood. So we've got to have change. I'm the only true conservative outsider that can bring that change. And when it happens, it's going to make our state great. And we can pass things like term limits to ensure that we really change the makeup of the legislature moving forward.
I got to tell you, Governor Haley tried the same thing. She issued letter grades to members of the legislature, and they did not like that at all. And it did tarnish that relationship between the two. It makes it harder to get anything done, doesn't it?
We've got some great people down there who are really fighting hard to get things done, and there are a few bad apples, especially in the Senate, that are preventing those changes from occurring. Governor Haley did a great job of really starting the process of targeting people, but I'm going to take it a step further because I'm going to help recruit the quality candidates. I'm going to help them get financing, and I'm going to campaign with them. And that way, I'm going to ensure that they will win because a lot of these other legislators, they're not popular even in their own districts, and we just have to change the makeup of the legislature.
A couple of veteran questions for you here. I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of them lately. The upstate has a ton, both Iraq and Afghanistan, and then going back into Vietnam, Korea, and even further back. And a lot of them say they are having a hard time getting the services they need from the federal government. Is there something that the state level can do to better serve those veterans?
Well, I think we have to make sure that they have quality access to the VA. You know, one of the things that I see throughout all the veterans is they're not appreciated oftentimes in the private sector. I mean, I face this personally, which is people really honor their service, they appreciate it, but they don't understand how their skills transfer into the private sector. So some of the things that I would like to do is make sure that all of our veterans get quality resumes, make sure that we're educating the C-level executives in the private sector as to why they should hire Marines or other veterans. You know, I tell companies, don't hire veterans because you feel sorry for them. Hire them because you want to improve the profitability and culture of your company, because that's what veterans bring. I also think statewide, we need to make licensing more transferable. You know, if you can drive a 7-ton while getting blown up in Iraq, you can drive a truck here in South Carolina. You shouldn't have to start at the bottom in terms of the licensing. It should be more transferable. So those are some of the things I'd like to do.
If you can find more CDL drivers, you've solved 2 problems at once. That's
exactly.
for sure. When I talk to a lot of these vets, I've met a startling number of them who suffer some effects of what is PTSD from what they've done in combat. Would you support medical marijuana for those veterans who believe it would help them?
I think the vast majority of veterans that are suffering from something, they're suffering from a lack of careers, they're suffering from a lack of camaraderie, and they're suffering from a lack of higher purpose. Because when you go and you fight for your flag, you have a higher calling, you can trust the people next to you, and you're fighting for something that really matters. And oftentimes when they come back here, and they have a hard time finding careers, finding jobs. They're not appreciated, their skill set's not valued. That leads to a lot of disconnect from the people that they protected, and oftentimes a lot of depression. So I think if we solve the careers and really fight for that and help them integrate more into society, that will help them more than anything. You know, one of the things that people don't realize is if you compare our society today to World War II, 18% of the people in World War II served their country. Everyone knew veterans, they associated with them, and they were easily assimilated into society. Today it's less than 1%. So I think there's a disconnect oftentimes between the veterans and the society they protect.
And on that question though about medical marijuana, it sounds like that's a no from you.
I would investigate it, but I'm not sold that medical marijuana is the solution to PTSD.
All right. Last issue you want people to associate with you?
I think leadership. You know, we need someone that has the right core values, who is a true conservative, who's going to serve the taxpayer, someone that has the right competencies to lead the state, and finally someone that has the courage to fight the special interest on behalf of the taxpayers. And I'm the only one in this race that has that type of leadership.
Republican John Warren, thank you.
Thank you.